Hello and welcome to Toff's third presentation. In this presentation, Toff is going to talk about the development of his work throughout university and see exactly why he does what he does now. Now, let's see if we can get him online. Excellent. Over to him. Bye. Yo! So I started off in the first year like everyone else. We had a project set where we had to go out and collect 3 random objects. I turned up with a twig, a crystal rock and a rubber duck. We had to make observational drawings of these objects, and from there on the project continued and slowly became more your own work, if you like. Later on we had choices of various different workshops to choose from. I chose to go with digital media as a minor strand. In taking the strand we learned about different forms of digital art and also how to use different programs to create work. I very quickly became interested in the program Photoshop. I also realised that this would be a contemporary way of working, as digital art has only been around for the last 10 years or so. I had to apply the basics I had learnt in digital to my studio practice. Some of the reasons why I wanted to use Photoshop over the other mediums at the time was because I had bought a laptop and figured that it would not be restricted to the way I would work. I mean, I could take my laptop everywhere and I could do work wherever I was. Also, a very clean, tidy way of working, whereas painting and sculpture would mean I would potentially have to work in the studio, and then lack of studio space in the first year would mean I'd have to find storage space, all sorts of problems. Whereas work done on my computer could be stored in files and allow me to be more organised, if you like. By the end of the first year, I had pretty much decided that Photoshop would probably be my main practice, and I started to use it in my main studio work. I tried out various different ways of working with it, using different images from photos, internet, and images drawn freehand using the mouse and paintbrush tools. I started to make up collages of these different pictures, a lot of which had graffiti in. I was interested in the writing of graffiti and how different people perceive it. Is this vandalism or is it an art? This led me on to thinking about the laws and rules. I had very strong views on the amount of rules Britain has at the time. For example, health and safety along with other ones. Coming from Switzerland, a place where I do a lot of freeride skiing, and nature is everywhere, all around us, I found it frustrating how so much of this freedom is taken away by rules and the way certain things have to be done in a certain way, especially around Chichester, which isn't exactly a huge city, but still situated in the countryside, or the countryside is 2 minutes down the road. So I started to make some work based on some of my feelings towards these rules, maybe some of the ones I had experienced personally. I found that there were a lot more don'ts than do's, if you like, so I started to use various signs and things that people had said verbally to me. I would combine both writing with an image to find out what people would make of it. I would most of the time have maybe an image of nature overlapped with some hectic text, but with no obvious link and less explained. I was trying to find a small gap between the work looking like art or like an advertisement. Some of the artists I was looking at around the beginning were people like Banksy, Jean-Michel Basquiat, and later on Bob Kruger, Rennie McReed, and Bob and Roberta Smith with a text. Some of the pieces were for me, but I soon realised that using text in my work was not a bright idea, as text isn't one of my strengths, and writing has always proved a problem for me. This was made later clear towards the end of the second year, when I found out I was dyslexic. Booyah! So we've heard a bit about the first year, now let's see what Christoph has to say about the second year. At the start of the second year, we were given an open project to do with the site. I decided to move away from the text works I was doing originally and work with images instead. I was very fortunate over the summer break between first year and second year to go and visit the Far East. I travelled around Hong Kong, Japan, China and Thailand. Whilst I was over there, I took thousands of photographs of things that caught my eye and things I found interesting for whatever reasons at the time. With the theme of sight in mind, I figured I should use these photos I have taken of abroad, as they are very different places to Chichester. I started to make collages of these different images. The idea at the time for me was to capture some of these extraordinary different places I'd seen and paste them all seamlessly into one single image. So I made various different photo montages of these combined sites. I used photos from other places I had visited around the world as well, and always trying to keep in them an element of me which would be represented through the photos I've got of the Alps, and then pasting them in the background of some of these images. I was curious to see if from these images I could create a believable photograph and trick the viewer into what they were actually looking at. I was looking at the whole truth of photography in camera lucida by Roland Barthes, and how since the Second World War photography was mainly used for documentary purposes and how photographs were meant to be snaps of reality. I was looking at photographers like Jeff Wall, Andreas Gursky and Thomas Struve for inspiration and how their images were constructed. Towards the end of the second year, I decided the images of my travels and the collages I had made worked, but not well enough for me. Some people would get confused at first and believe it, and others who had been to these places worked out that it was a montage and didn't believe it quite as much, but still were impressed at how believable some of these pictures looked. Another technique I was trying out at the time is this tilt and shift technique, I call it, where with the right image you can add some progressive lens blur to certain areas and it will make the photograph look like a picture of a model. The fakeness worked well, but I found a lot of people were already doing this and using the same technique. Towards the end of the second year, coming up to the crits, I wanted to make a piece which would be able to almost convince people that it was just a single shot image, but at the same time leave hints that it wasn't. So make these hints hard to find. I thought about a subject which I could use, which is kind of local. I thought what better subject than Grainwell, which is just behind the university. Around the same time I was attending lectures over there about this potential development of Grainwell being turned into studios for artists, exhibition space, as well as all sorts of other glorious things. My interest was to capture this path, if you like, of Grainwell once